Hello and good afternoon, everyone. As we are just waiting for people to join, if you don't mind just dropping in the chat where you're coming in from today. It's always kind of fun to see, people that are coming from the same area. You might be neighboring cities and not even know it. We'll give a couple minutes just for people to start joining. If you can, just drop in the chat where you're coming in from today. See a couple familiar faces. It's nice to see everyone. The cold Minneapolis. Oh, I do not envy that, Angie. I do not envy you right now. Thank you. We do have Isabel from behind my desk. Excellent. Oh, from Rockport, Texas as well. Excellent. Perfect. We'll give it just a couple minutes. We were having an internal chat. Karen will appreciate this. That today is the Taylor Swift tickets go on sale. So if you're a Swiftie, drop that in the chat too. I want to find my fellow Swifties out there. I need some new friends. Nobody here understands my love for Taylor Swift. But anyway, excellent. Nope. You know what? We're going to ignore that. Can I delete the chat? Can I censor this? Right. Oh, North Carolina. Welcome. Got a little representation. I'm originally from Utah, so I'm waiting for the day that some of my Utah friends join in. So if anybody knows people in Utah, give them a little nudge. Tell them Cece's waiting for them here at the U.S. Chamber. Excellent. All right. Well, as we have people joining, again, give us a little shout out of where you're coming in from. It's always fun to see and nice to make those little connections. We'll go ahead and get started. So we're excited for today's webinar, the 10 tips to prepare you when disaster strikes your community, led by our very own Diane Probst. Diane is a legend in the chamber industry, and she led her state association as the chairman of the board. She has authored 2 books and served as president and CEO of the Rockport-Fulton Chamber of Commerce for 32 years. Very recently retired, and she is loving it from the sound of it. Under her leadership, the chamber held their accreditation status for 25 years, and 15 of those were at the 5-star level. So she is really a legend. When I say that, I truly mean that. We're really excited to hear from her today. Just a couple housekeeping notes as a reminder. The webinar is recorded and it will be available alongside with the PowerPoint about 48 hours afterwards on the Institute website, and I'll drop that link here in the chat. As a CAE and CCE approved provider, this webinar does count and qualify for 1 hour of CAE credit or 1 point of CCE credit. So in order to request the certificate, go ahead and email us, and I will drop this in the link in the chat as well. It's IOM@uschamber.com. And then lastly, just throughout, as I'm sure you'll have questions and comments of her best practices and what Diane has experienced, please use the Q&A chat to type in any questions, and we will do all of the questions at the very end of the webinar. So please go ahead and use that feature, and we will definitely circle back. With that said, I'm excited to turn this time over to Diane.
Great. Well, thank you, Cece, for that great introduction. I'm excited to be here today, so let's just dive right in. Ten tips to prepare you when disaster strikes your community. I'm a graduate of Institute back in 1996. That dates me a little bit. The objective of the webinar today is to get the framework to you of what to do when disaster strikes your community. We really wanted to point out that a disaster could be a disaster of really any kind. Today, we're faced with so much going on in our world that the disaster could be weather related, or it could be a emergency, a shooting, active shooter, what have you. The disaster that strikes your community is what we're going to focus on for today. We'll review the 10 tips or the lessons that I learned to kind of break out and help you so that we've culled through the chaos, so to speak. And then lastly, that constructive question and answer session, we want that to be very interactive. Cece and I talked about this. We want to hold it to the end so that we can really drill down with those questions. Sometimes the question and answer period is more beneficial than the actual presentation. So we want to make sure that you know that questions are at the end. So just jot a note down on what your question might be. So let's dive in. So the phases of a disaster come in 2 phases. First, it's the crisis phase, and then the long-term recovery phase. In that crisis phase, you really, really need to reach out to the U.S. Chamber Foundation, Community Resilience and Disaster Response Resources. There's a disaster help desk for you. There's a resilience in a box. There's funding. There's all sorts of things. So make sure that you pop that in a Google search and locate that website and tuck it away, because you will go to it at some point if disaster strikes your community. So let's drill down on those 2 phases. First phase, the crisis mode. This is when it all happens. This is when the deluge of people are calling and they're coming in to help. It could be a month long, maybe 2 months long, but it's that initial chaotic shock and awe phase that hits your community or hits your area. So what are the top priorities? Well, the top priorities for us in our disaster were the cleanup. I suppose that could go for just anything. The insurance situation and the FEMA situation where they come into your community almost immediately and get to work. I remember driving around like, who are all of these people? Who all do they belong to? How does all of this work? And then item number 3 is, you know, the economy. You're going to be so shocked as to what to do, because we are all about business. We're all about those small businesses out there. We're all about those businesses getting what they need to function and draw revenue. Say goodbye to chambers if we lose our businesses. So the need for employees comes into play. Are there employees out there? Were their homes damaged? Are they suffering in any way after the disaster? And then housing of those employees. The areas that I have highlighted in yellow are the areas that we zoomed in as a Chamber of Commerce. So that just kind of gives you an idea. Then you roll into your second phase. Now, this is the long-term recovery. For us, our top priority was to do the best that we could and kind of reap the benefits of it and leverage what we could. So we chose, or our county judge chose, to hire outside city managers. They had a foundation call our county judge and say, what can we do to help you? And he said, hire me some people, give me some people to help, because you're going to have a deluge of forms to fill out. You're going to have grants to apply for. You're going to have all sources of funding coming your way via state or federal funding. You're going to have to fill out forms. You're going to need help. You're going to have to identify sources of funding, because there's a lot out there. What are you going to go for? What can you do well? You're going to have to develop a plan to get there. You're going to have to leverage that funding. Okay, so what if we lost our courthouse? So we lost that courthouse. How can we leverage funding for the city and the roads that are around it? What kind of grants can we do? A lot of that has to play out. So that's where the hired city managers really helped us. You're going to have to prepare for delays after delay after delay after delay. It just goes on and on and on. You're going to have to get a public buy-in for what you're doing, because you can see it. You know that you need whatever you need as far as infrastructure or items or people or whatever the project entails. You're going to know that you need it, but you're going to have to get the buy-in from the community. And how do you do this when you're strained, when your community has been hurt, you're basically wounded? And then strategic communications. You're going to have to strategize on the best way to reach out to your community. It doesn't just happen your normal way. You've got to get your arms around it, and you've got to have a plan. Now, where is Rockport-Fulton? If you're wondering, if you picture the state of Texas, we're right in that bend of Texas there at the arrow, called the coastal bend of Texas. We promote the two towns, Rockport and Fulton. Rockport is the county seat of our county, one of the smallest counties in the state of Texas, Aransas County. Now, the storm came rolling through. That is the eye of the storm. You can see the red area is the most dangerous part, and that went directly over our county. And this didn't take just a couple of hours. It was 13 hours of hurricane force winds. First one direction, beating us up, and then the other direction, further beating up what it had already damaged. So our community was devastated with a Category 4 hurricane. Had we had a hurricane previously? Not since 1970. I've been working for the chamber since 1990 and never had to deal with the hurricane, but it hit us. So I remember the day when they told us, you're a sitting duck. And we thought, nah, we're okay. We got barrier islands. We're okay. Wrong. So the 10 tips and lessons that I learned were lesson number 1. It is amazing how leaders stepping up to lead and that whole interaction aspect. Leadership is key. Leadership is an evolution of partnerships that are defined by support, innovation, and basic needs. Leaders will evolve, but what struck me is that some are just not able to lead. They're not able to do it for some reason. They're not good with disaster management. They're good leaders, but they just choose not to be involved. But then again, some out of the blue will evolve and be leaderships. Partnerships will develop. I remember our Samaritan's Purse, the nationwide organization, came to our First Baptist Church and said, we need to locate here. We're going to be building 1,000 homes here in the coastal bend, and we need to build a 10,000 square foot warehouse. We want to build it on your property, and you're going to get the building in 5 years. And that has been phenomenal. So partnerships will develop. What will lead you in your community? What will be your role? Think about that a second. What is your niche? What are you good at? How will you step up and lead? My tip for you is to stay in your lane and find your niche and do that niche well, because it can be overwhelming. There's so much to do. It can be overwhelming. I focused in on 3 areas. First off, the fundraising, the money. We know what to do with it. We have the account set up. We have the governance structure set up. That's an area we focused in. Another area was communication and information. We're good at informing the public. We know how to do that. We know how to get the word out. Others, not so much. So for our community, a small community, communicating the correct information was important to us. And then the third thing was the economy. If you don't have an economy going, you don't have your businesses. And if you don't have your businesses, that's the heart of the community. So we got busy on that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Lesson number, well, let me show you this photo first. This is our 2 mayors. The man on the right is a 2-star general. His was the actual mayor of Rockport. And the man on the left is our mayor of Fulton. And they work together really well as leaders, bringing and evolving other leaders in our community. So strong leaders will emerge, maybe not who you thought it was, but strong leaders will emerge. Lesson number 2, unified one voice communication. We had to have consistent meetings, and at those meetings develop a reporting procedure when we left those meetings. If you left that meeting, you were not to say anything other than what was reported in those meetings. No rumors, no inflating stories, no anything like that. It was one voice communication. So if the media called, you had to turn that information over to that 2-star general, our mayor of Rockport, and he was the one voice. He made that very clear to us. He has done disasters before, and he was able to really drive and focus on that one voice and did an extremely good job. So your tip is to become part of your EOC and be this one voice. So you might ask, what's an EOC? It's defined as the Emergency Operations Center. So here's a picture of ours. Each chair represents a local department. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see my laptop there. I'm sitting at this location, kind of towards the back of the room, because you have to find your role. I shouldn't be on the front row. I'm you know, a Chamber of Commerce, the businesses. The gentleman to my right is the chief appraiser with the appraisal district. The other gentleman is our deputy sheriff. And then emergency personnel are all throughout. So I feel an honor and a privilege to be in this EOC room. I had to kind of push my way in there after working with these guys probably for 12 years. Finally got a seat established and got them to listen to me. But everything that I said in those rooms, I had to construct it so that they needed me. They needed to hear what the businesses were doing. I would find anything. If Walmart was handing out ice, that was what I made an announcement on. I would find anything to make myself relevant and important, or some information that they didn't know that they needed. So you're going to have to think about that in the disaster and work your way into those rooms, because that's where you get all your information. So in this room, we were shown exactly what was happening with the hurricane and everything. And by the way, you could hear a pin drop in that room when they told us that we were ground zero. Now, lesson number 3, the GoFundMe account. So let's just talk about this a little bit. This was no fun for me. About a couple of hours into the storm, I was monitoring our Facebook pages, and we were getting hits after hits after hits. How can we help? How can we help? Who can we text money to? How can we help? How can I get this to you? So I without being able to get a hold of anybody to get this approved, I went to our GoFundMe account that we had already established for a prior event with our foundation, and I quickly worded it so that it was humanitarian support for the disaster. And I popped that link into Facebook. And once I started doing that, every question, every person that inquired, I popped the link that they could give. So within the first hour, I remember the first amount was $500 coming from New York. Well, in 60 days, it went to $1.4 million. Our little foundation had $2,000 in the bank at the beginning of the storm and $1.4 million in 60 days. Our chamber was $1 million budget, so it grew larger than our Chamber of Commerce in 60 days. So do you have a nonprofit ready to receive those funds? Do its bylaws match up to a disaster? Check that out. Most of the foundations that I've seen are all geared towards education and leadership. So make sure you check your bylaws so that you can run a GoFundMe, because you're going to get asked the question just because you're so predominant in the community. So what nonprofit? Now take it a step further. What organization in your community has a case management process in place for unmet needs? Now, those may be big words, or that process may be difficult for you to relate to, but that you're going to hear that time and time again. So a case would be, say, a family that needs help. The unmet needs is, what do they need? Do they need a new roof? Do they need a car? What do they need? So that organization that was in place has to be skilled for that. Do you have this in place for your community? Who would do it? Well, I immediately thought of our ministerial alliance. That's each of the pastors. They're all in one little organization. It's already formed. It's a C3. We could give the money to them, and they could all give it out to those that need it. Well, when I asked them, one was in a wheelchair, one had a cane, and another one was not computer literate. And the others were so overwhelmed by everything that was coming to our community. That was not a possibility. So then we thought, well, maybe we could disperse it through proving if you lived at a residence or something through a utility bill. Well, what are you going to do when you reach that last person and there's no more? So we started consulting with different communities that had had disasters, and were told numerous times, hold on to the funds and give it to an organization that is set up to do this. So we found that in the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group. We can talk more about that later. But the tip is have a process in place to receive and then distribute. And these are called unsolicited donations. You did not ask for these donations. These are just coming your way by people you didn't ask or anything. So the giving spirit was found throughout. This particular girl held a series of lemonade stands to give for the people of Rockport-Fulton. You can see right there, the bottom right for Rockport-Fulton. So people from all over were raising funds. I remember artists got together and raised money for our artist community, and on and on and on. Lesson number 4, the chamber. We were steady and strong. So define your role, stay strong, steady, and persevere. Stay laser focused. We got hit. We got hit from many directions. We knew we had to get the economy started again. So we did our major festival that 6 weeks out after the storm. Our festival is called Seafair, and we knew we had to reactivate or get those economic engines going. We faced so much opposition from that. Where are the visitors going to stay? All of our hotels were damaged and in repair. How are the emergency personnel going to work? Where are we going to put all the debris? It's a construction site. We faced so much opposition. We just kept persevering and moved forward. And it was amazing what that one little move did for our community. It showed the other organizations, oh, well, they had their event, we can have it too. So in other words, it did what we wanted to. It restarted that economic engine, because we were going to lose the businesses that we had if we didn't get the word out that we're okay. And what better way can you get the word out that you're okay when you have a huge festival? So we had to change the hours. We had to do a lot of reworking of the festival, but we had the festival. Best thing we ever did. The housing and recovery fairs and expos were important, although they did not draw as many people as we would have liked. We focused on, as I said before, fundraising, communication, and building back the economy. We got the word out that our businesses were open, and we started getting small business grants. People that donated to that GoFundMe, we said, we got smart midway and said, who would you like to give to? The humanitarian aspect of our community, or business development, or community? In other words, welcome signs and improvements like that. So we built up a little bit of a fund, about $100,000 for business grants. And then I was able to go out and leverage that with other organizations and doubled it. So be strong, steadfast, and celebrate your businesses. So let's go through some slides here that kind of show how we did that. First, we did Harvey, we won ribbon cuttings. We did a fist bump. So we won. And it was so neat to see the business out there going, we did this. And when you see those fists in the air, you know what they went through: insurance issues, repair issues, workmen, probably contractor issues, and so on. And the little cookie that we're pointing to, that's an actual cookie from a fallen tree. You can see it in this photo here. You can see how thick of it. That was a wonderful tree that we lost. And so we were able to get a portion of it. And as we would go to these Harvey, we won ribbon cuttings. There were over 200 of them. We had them sign the back of it. So that cookie is displayed in our visitor center now, and it's full of signatures. The particular lady on the right had a dress shop in downtown Rockport. Her place flooded, had damage. It was just a horrible get-go for her. In fact, she didn't die because of the storm, but she died because of the storm. It was about a year later, and she just succumbed to all the issues. So that picture means a lot to me because we tried to help her as much as we could. The next slide shows our rally for Rockport-Fulton. This was the chamber luncheon. Now, keep in mind, we have lost a lot of our structures. Everything was damaged. I went to the church who had a tent up and some porta potties and said, "Can I have a luncheon in here?" And they were like, "What?" And we had the Mercy Chefs organization. I went to them and said, "Could you provide 200 meals?" And they said, "What?" I went to the other chamber execs that were around us in the surrounding communities, and I said, "Can y'all come over and help serve?" And they said, "Sure." And so we were able to have a luncheon, and our staff at the chamber really worked hard, and they had the deer in the headlight looks, but we held a luncheon 2 weeks after the storm. And the luncheon was all about that information that they needed to hear. Lesson 5, social media whirlwind. Now, with today and the world we live in today, social media can be a good thing as it'll get the information out, or it can be a bad thing. Here are some of the following things that if I could have done, I would have done. You need a running spreadsheet of all active posts and comments. For us, it's a small community. You're thinking, how can you do that? Well, about 20 Facebook groups evolved for us. So it'd be just volunteers monitoring those 20 different groups. A videographer that could go out and just keep a continual video and message going as to what's happened. And then a solid Facebook page with pertinent and exact information to be the go-to source. And then maybe a streaming channel to air nightly messages that you could get the correct information off in this one voice information, because information and communication was a very difficult task to grab hold of and do. It's very tiresome. And then we did e-blasts to businesses on where to get what. We did press releases on various activities. So my tip here is put together a dynamic communications team, people who know what they're doing and can develop that and get their arms around it and be the strategic team. And my suggestion is no less than 12 people. These were the mayor's letters. I made it a point to make sure that something with businesses got put in those letters. Everybody was going to the mayor's letters. You had to find out where to get your mail, when the water was going to be turned on, when the electricity was going to be turned on. So you had to get to that mayor's letter. Well, they would post them and we would all repost. So that was an excellent source. Now to do things differently, we would have posters and boards and things like that because we didn't have power. We got the word out that Rockport-Fulton is open for business. We just simply used a live Google sheet and posted the businesses that were open, and it was overwhelming to the amount of businesses open. We only lost 50 businesses after the hurricane. Now, COVID came and some of them didn't quite make it, but 50 businesses only. The rest repaired and reopened. This is a picture of me and our chairman of the foundation giving the checks, the 1.4 million, because you can't have them all in one bank to write one check, or at least we didn't, and giving that to the Coastal Bend Community Foundation to disperse those funds as needed on approval to another organization. So we layered it. And our chairman of the board, I just quick called her as a thought, with every situation, put a volunteer in between you and the problem. To this day, she is a great spokesperson for what happened with that GoFundMe account. We faced so much opposition because everybody came to us with their hand out. Not everybody, but so many people were in such need. They had a car issue, or they had a utility bill issue or something. That we're not that type of organization that can disperse those funds. We had to get it to the people who could, and a lot of people didn't understand that. So that I'm on the right, our chairman of the board is in the middle, and then we gave that check, and that was a wonderful day. That was in December after the hurricane hit in August. Now, lesson 6, the disaster after the disaster. Unsolicited donations of items, now these are material items, need a place to go and a manager. It's okay to ask for help. Because we are a small community, we were asked constantly, called constantly, where can we give? Who can we give to? Where can we drop these off? We didn't have a warehouse available. So we had to find a church or a volunteer reception center. Find a location for that, a reception center that can house a large volume of materials. Learn about your faith-based organizations. They're going to be a center point for receiving these volunteers. They can easily put up cots and feed people and make it a systematic approach to handling the deluge of people coming in to help your community. We established tourism. Come visit the coast, have fun, and help while you're here. So that was all handled through the Volunteer Reception Center, or called the VRC. The people that arrived, the Operation Blessing, and it talks about this in the U.S. Chamber's Disaster Recovery website. They came into our community. We had no idea who they are. They had waivers for volunteers to sign. They had a systematic approach. They had material. They knew what to do, and they were a blessing to our community. When the items started coming in from all over, there was no way we could handle what was coming in. They were dropping them off on street corners. They were dropping off clothing, material, computers, items. It was crazy. It was so much stuff by the truckloads. Our emergency personnel told people, we don't need any more. And truckloads were coming in to our county, and at some point they said, go away, we don't need any more. Well, listen, how rude was that, and how social media really, that was just a negative for us. So be ready to handle that and try to get your emergency personnel on board with what's happening. And you know, when it happens to you that sudden, we had 20 hours to prepare. When, you know, any disaster happens suddenly, probably, so you've got to be ready to handle what happens and react accordingly. Lesson number 7, economic revitalization must be quick. Our lesson learned was promotion, partnerships, and prioritization. Promotion to jumpstart your community, and we're going to look at what we did. We held a ad campaign that we got funded through a nonprofit organization. Partnerships together can make it all happen for you, and then prioritization of what you need to do is so important. Tourism promotion, we knew, was the quickest thing that we could do for revitalization. Let people know it's okay to come back to our community. Activate an economic activity as soon as possible in support of your businesses. Our businesses knew we had their backs, not only with small business grant funds. Let's say they lost a refrigerator due to all the storm surge or the electricity reactivation, that maybe we could help fund that through a small business grant. So we developed forms and were able to do that. So our state representative contacted all the leaders of the chambers in the surrounding areas, and he said, let's do a back to business recovery concert. So we got busy and got some concert acts together and held an event and raised money to be split amongst the chambers. We would go on TV and radio all the time. I would say 2 or 3 a month of major media showing how we were doing, what we were doing to help our community and how our community was doing. You know, you're always taught to not say the negative for your community. I had to learn how to do that in a positive way, and that's challenging. So we developed a Find Yourself in Rockport-Fulton comeback campaign. We went to the Rebuild Texas Michael and Susan Dell Foundation and asked them to give us $250,000. And they were able to do that, and that was wonderful. So Jeff, the talented team of Jeff Hunt, another pro bono person coming forward, said, I'll help you guys with your PR. So it was wonderful. So he was, through his work, we were able to contact George Strait. Now, those of you that know George Strait and his wonderful music, you know, he's the king of country. We had contacted him numerous times to try to get him to give items for silent auctions to help us in any way prior to the storm, and he would just not be able to. He has a home in Rockport. It's on the bay, and he loves to come here and fish. So when he saw that our community was hurt, finally he came through. He said this, I traveled all over and there's no place I'd rather be than right here in Texas. Can you imagine? The king of country said that for us. One of my favorite places to visit is Rockport-Fulton. Can you imagine if George Strait loves our community? Everyone will love our community. He says, every time I cross over the Copano Bridge and see that beautiful bay, it feels like home. I hope you find yourself in Rockport soon. So we brought this actual commercial for you to see and hear, and it's the voice of George Strait.
I'm back to being nobody.
Hello, everybody. This is George Strait, and I've traveled all over, yet there's no place I'd rather be than right here in Texas. One of my favorite places is the Rockport-Fulton area on the coast. Every time I cross over the Copano Bridge and see that beautiful bay, it feels like home. I hope you find yourself in Rockport, Texas soon.
I'm back to being nobody.
Sorry about that. So that was just phenomenal that we were able to coordinate that with his team and to make that happen. Lesson number 8, failure to plan is a plan for failure. A long-term recovery plan is inevitable. Long-term recovery, ours was more than 120 pages. We had a deluge of plan providers, and these are national organizations, universities, people from really all over the United States wanted to come and help us. You're going to need a plan. You're going to need this. You're going to need that. So as a Chamber of Commerce, we were contacted, and we had to put together the people to give the input. And so many of these plans were coming our way. It's overwhelming, but it's so important. So many universities wanted to survey what's happening in your community, what happened, and so on. I would say a good 2 to 3 years of this was happening as far as plan providers coming to us. We generated a solid 8 plans, all good, but my goodness, can you imagine 8 different plans to work through? So my tip is, yes, create a plan, but make sure it's an implementation plan, meaning you have the item, but also who's going to do it, when are they going to do it, and with what resources, and then someone to hold you accountable. We would put together these community input sessions, and it was so neat because people would be able to come in and, you know, with that PTSD going on, talk about what they went through and what their business is suffering with and so on. So this is just one of those meetings. Number 9, find healthy happiness. Lesson learned, take care of yourself, both physically, spiritually, and mentally. So embrace the disaster. It happened. There's nothing you can do about it. It happened. What is your carrot to cope? So every couple of months, we would do a trip, and it would be just a quick getaway just to kind of rest your mind and clear your mind. Because when this disaster strikes, you're not going to rest. You're not going to sleep well. You have to think about everything is chaotic and in disarray, and a lot on your shoulders. So you need to physically be good to yourself. So what is it that you enjoy? Do you run? Do you What is it that you enjoy? Stay healthy. Don't miss that doctor's appointment. So many times we would put off things, and it's just encouraging you to stay on track. Don't yourself. You're important. Appreciate the unique opportunities you wouldn't experience otherwise. And what I mean by this is things will come your way that maybe haven't ever heard of or weren't a part of. So in our community, the Amish community came for months, and they had a campsite that they worked out with a local rancher. They brought in their own equipment, their own vehicles. Well, I guess they don't have vehicles. They were bussed in, and it was just a neat encampment of how the Amish people live. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to go there. Well, every Thursday night, they did a meal in appreciation for the community and for the people that they helped build their home for that particular week. They invited my husband and I out to this meal. We went thinking we're going to thank them. In fact, I had a speech prepared about how much we appreciate them, and they didn't want to hear it. They wanted to thank us. They fed us, and it wasn't just corn, it was shrimp. It was wonderful food. And they wanted to show us how much they appreciate us for giving them the opportunity. And I'll never forget that experience, because for some reason that particular day I painted fingernails orange. And I was so embarrassed that why did I choose that color when they make every item that they wear and they have no makeup or anything. So I remember being self-conscious. Just a little sidebar there. Time management. Use the 3 Ds. Do it, delegate it out, or ditch it. Time management has to come into play here, or you will be overwhelmed. Take care of yourself is the tip. And then whatever the occasion, you can find the time to take care of yourself. When the storm comes, or whatever natural disaster you face, and the adrenaline sets in to fix your community, you will need to stop, breathe, and take care of yourself. We went on a crazy Christmas vacation. It was 3 days. We went to New Orleans, and we brought our entire family. We met at a cute little house. This was December, so we were still in disarray. And so a lot of the people were talking about this particular GoFundMe account and what are they doing with the funds. And here we are going on a vacation, so you can imagine the social media. So be ready for things like that, and find the good in it some way and post that. And just a lot of negative will come your way, and be ready. Mistakes happen, and move on. Lesson learned, it's not what happens, it's how you handle it. Confident action is what it takes. We did the seafair. We did the vacation. We stayed laser focused. We got the small business grants. We had an application process. You have to be confident in what you're doing. Your adrenaline will kick in to fuel you through the situation. When negative comments come your way, you need to press forward and move on. And I don't mean to sound harsh with that. I just mean you have to be very focused, because the harsh and the negative will come. You are the best person to drive your community into the next phase. Tip, you just have to weather the storm, so grin and bear it the best you can. Closing, Harvey's hit was life-changing for us. Change is inevitable. Accept it and move on. What we did is we looked at our silver linings that came to us, and gosh, there were more than 20 solid silver linings coming our way, which we're extremely grateful. And we had so many people ask us, or so many of the visitors ask, did your community have a hurricane? It doesn't even look like it. Because we had so much help and so many people helping and driving our community and wanting to repair it, we were able to repair quickly. So at the 5-year mark, we really have come a long way. So I want to show you this video of, this is former Dallas Cowboy football player, Dat Wynn, who is from Rockport-Fulton, showing and telling the people how proud we are of their help.
5 years ago, the people of Rockport braced themselves for the worst. On August 25th, 2017, Hurricane Harvey came roaring ashore like a freight train. Trees snapped like twigs, street flooded, buildings came apart at the seams. Turned out the hurricane did more than blow away buildings. It uncovered a community that was stronger than any storm. To honor the effect it took to bring this coastal gem back to life, the Rockport-Fulton Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center has created an interactive experience called Rock Solid, our journey of resilience. So the next time you find yourself in Rockport-Fulton, stop by the Visitor Center to see firsthand the journey of the resilience that rock-solid people like you help make possible. And on behalf of all the folks in Rockport-Fulton, thank you. Learn more at rockport-fulton.org.
All right, so that concludes our webinar. We're going to roll right into the Q&A session. Cece, you want to take it over from here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Diane. I'll give you a little bit of a break. I know you've been just powering through, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I literally had chills there at the end with just, going through and seeing all of the different aspects that go into disaster management and what's needed in your community, and how, as chamber and association and nonprofit management, execs and in working in this industry, how we can support our communities. We do have one question so far, and if anybody, if you did hold your questions until the end, please go ahead and type those in either the Q&A or in the chat. So one question on fundraising, is there a benefit to using GoFundMe if they already have a C3 foundation capable of collecting donations? Or do you find visibility or credibility with GoFundMe, or is it okay to use the foundation website?
I used the GoFundMe aspect because it has a great marketing tool with it. It markets for you. That link was popping up in places because they want you to be successful. And so that helped us. Now, later we learned the percentage take for GoFundMe is, gosh, after you draw it and everything, it's over 8%. So we quickly switched to PayPal Giving Fund, which is much easier to maneuver, and then we were able to pop that link into places. But our marketing at that point kind of diminished, and the fund kind of diminished, and so it was just great for the marketing.
Excellent, thank you for that. We didn't have any other questions, but if there are, I'll give everyone just a couple minutes. Any other questions that come to mind? Just as a reminder for those that joined a little bit later, just to kind of go over, the webinar was recorded and it will be available on the Institute website, as well as the accompanying PowerPoint and the links that were shared in the videos. And because Institute and we are a CAE and a CCE approved provider, this does qualify for 1 hour of CAE credit and 1 point of CCE credit. And you can request the certificate by emailing over to the IOM at US Chamber inbox. So with that said, it looks like...
Cece?
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention, I have written a blog that's an extension of what you can find out more information on the visitor center and how we did that and how we funded it and so on. So that'll be up in a later blog post by the U.S. Chamber. So just watch out for that. And when you see that post, click on that, and more videos and more information will be there.
Yes, so that will be featured. So we will be promoting and just putting out the webinar for those that missed it, or if you came in late, or if there's something you want to reference. Those will be going out later this week. So typically within about 48 hours, watch for that. I'm really excited. And again, thank you so much, Diane, for sharing your knowledge and sharing your experience with everyone. We're getting a lot of nice comments here in the chat. Yeah, no questions coming in, but we'll give everyone a couple minutes back to your day. Try and enjoy the weather wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Yeah, disaster is not a fun topic. And what we hope to do today was to make it, as best as we could. But these 10 tips, you're probably thinking, oh, well, I'll probably never have to do that. Or believe me, when it happens in your community, as I said, oh, I'll never have to do that. It happens. And so what our goal was is to kind of give you the tips so that if it does happen, that you can get through it, and you're not going to pull out a plan from your desk and check off the items that you need. You're just not going to do that. You're going to do it from what you know in your mind, your memory of what comes to you. And the more we can put in your mind, the better off you're going to be.
Well, thank you once again. And if anybody does have any questions, Diane, her information will be available on the Institute website on that last slide there. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.